Thank you so much, Rita, and thank you to our Budapest chapter and to Google and all of you for coming here tonight. Ethics and technology is one of my favorite topics and something that I think is so important to our world. I wanted to base, how many of you have heard of Singularity University? Okay, great, a lot of you. So how many of you are familiar with our core theory about exponential technology? Okay, a few of you. Great. I'm going to just go through that briefly in the beginning because it will then help us set up the conversation around ethics and how technology is scaling so rapidly today and how it's impacting our lives. So as Rita mentioned, we were founded by Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil to use exponential technology to solve the world's biggest problems. And everything that we do is grounded in this idea of exponential change and the chip. And as many of you know, you probably heard of Moore's Law, which was this, it was an observation of a trend that was happening in the microchip industry where the chips were becoming more and more and more powerful in their capacity and performance while the price was being cut in half. And this happened over many decades. But what's interesting about this, it's not just the computer chip where this happens. It's anything where that is information based. And even more so, these exponential trends, they're part of how nature works. I can't explain to you all of physics and matter and how this happens, but you know, if you look around us at trees and different ways that nature exists, you see this exponential change, where when you start doubling things, you get these interesting patterns in this complexity. And so matter carries information in this way, and that's why we have things such as Moore's Law and other types of exponential change in our world. And I just want to mention that because sometimes we talk about exponential technology, it can just be, oh, it's this interesting trend or it's cool, but it's really actually grounded in how our universe works. And that means that anything that is information-based follows this, but because the role of the computer chip is actually to turn other stuff into information, we're seeing this trend happen in areas outside of just the computer chip. Cell phones are a perfect example of how fast the technology scaled. And at Singularity University, we also say, well, this is not just happening with networks and computers, and software, but also artificial intelligence and robotics. It's happening in biology and medicine because we've converted our DNA into software, into code, and that's how we work with it. When we have advanced manufacturing, 3D printers, nanotechnology, we're doing all of that with computers. So that's really the core theory of exponential change and why we think the world is changing so fast and why why we have the sense that our world is going to change so dramatically. And to just break that down a little further, we have something called the 6 Ds, where once you digitize a technology, it then goes through this trend where initially it's deceptive. We think, oh, those cell phones, they're expensive, only a few wealthy people will use them, and then suddenly everybody has one, where you get this, it becomes a disruptive element in society. And it goes through these different phases where, once we digitized music, photos, all of this stuff and put it on our cell phones, you didn't need to buy records, you didn't need to buy cameras because we digitized that technology. And similarly, all of these different objects, we turn them into data, so they dematerialized. And once you do that, these technologies you can share them, you can copy that software, you can spread that really fast. And we've seen this, right? You used to have to, some of you remember buying records, and now you can get music for free. The first time I traveled overseas, I went to Vietnam, and I called my parents to say I'd arrived. My phone call was $60. It was a 3-minute call, and now you have Skype, you can actually have video. So this is this interesting trend. Once you digitize something and once you dematerialize it, it also starts to demonetize, where the cost of it starts to head towards zero. And ultimately, we say that a technology is democratized once it becomes available to everyone, just like our cell phones are available. And the way that I think about this is when you digitize something, your costs are heading towards zero, your ability to scale is heading towards infinity, and the performance, you can make this technology more and more sophisticated, it's infinite. And sometimes it won't always reach zero or won't scale for a different reason, but that's like the big trend. And this is like why at Singularity University we think we can have this world abundance. Because if we're digitizing everything, you know, our food, our water, our shelter, how we manufacture things, then we can have an unlimited supply that's affordable to everyone. So that's the theory. And we look at how this is happening. You can see that pretty easily in something like education. When you think about online education, right? It's become more accessible. You can access it for free if you have a computer. It's becoming more and more sophisticated. But you can also start to see it in something like food, right? And just a few examples of this. So if we think about, if we have a world where everyone has consumption of sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, that's a world where we have an abundance of food. And just some of the examples that have been coming up in the last few years, there's a huge movement in vertical farms. You know, these are all sensors and it's robotic, and you're reducing your water supply by 95% because they're not in dirt. You can grow these all day and all night. So that there's this movement where food is becoming cheaper when it's grown in a vertical farm. We have people that are growing meat now in bioreactors. This is a man named Mark Post, and he took a little bit of cow. He didn't kill the cow, and over several years he learned how to grow in a bioreactor. And it used to cost $200,000, now it costs $10. But when I think about this, it might sound disgusting, but you don't have to kill the cow, and you're not destroying the environment. And he might be able to make it more healthy, right? So again, this is technology where there's costs are going down that could potentially transform how we eat beef and also chicken, fish. We had a group of students at Singularity University last summer 3D print a little bioreactor where they genetically engineered yeast to make vitamins. So a really simple version of that. This is a group called Tomra Food. They use artificial intelligence to sort potatoes and have reduced waste from potatoes by 10%. We waste a lot of food in the world. There's the Internet of Cows, where farmers are now tracking cows based on their, because they're hooked up to microchips and managing their herds. You know, we're having robotic cooks come. So this, I just wanted to give you a taste of how something you think of as food that would be so impossible to transform with technology, how we're starting to change even that. And even more so, you're seeing, even in places like Nigeria, Hello Tractor. It's the Uber of tractors, where tractors are shared, helping farmers be more efficient. Farmers in Myanmar are using, they're building the world's most efficient solar-powered water pump with NASA technology. So this technology scales everywhere. And it's helping break the poverty trap. So that's sort of the good side of technology. You know, there's limitations. You can't use these technologies if you don't have electricity. There's social limitations. Even in the US, we have all the technology in the world, but women aren't using it. It's a social barrier. Regulations can stop that digitization process, either, you know, business models or maybe you're not given access to the internet. And so then what happens is you start getting groups of people that are left behind while others are moving faster and faster into the future. And so, you know, one of the questions is, you know, how do we make sure that everyone has access to these innovations and everyone can build them? And the other thing that's really interesting is that if we really move into this world of abundance, where we can produce our goods and services with machines, with artificial intelligence, it starts changing how our economy works. How it creates a world where everyone has a lot more power, and it changes how our society works. And I'll give you a few examples too, how I think it's redefining the definition of what it means to be human. But in terms of like some of the new economic models that are happening, so one of the ideas that's emerging right now is that if you have machines and artificial intelligence making our goods and services, it takes a lot of money to initially build them. But then afterwards, it's very, very cheap. So we're moving into this world of fixed costs. And there's an author called Jeremy Rifkin who's written a book about this called the Zero Marginal Cost Society, about how this is changing our economy. And then if that is the way that the world works, if you need people that are going to be building a few things that are very expensive, but then you can't really get an economic return, how's the economy going to work? And some people say, well, we're going to have like 40 big companies that are going to have massive artificial intelligence capabilities that are just going to build and run everything. And then in that case, you're going to have to like tax those companies and redistribute the money through a basic income, or what Bill Gates, he's referring to as just tax a single robot like you would one person. There's also this idea you might have the human economy and the machine economy. So if a machine makes something, it might cost, a few pennies. But if the human is making it, if you want a human to take care of your child, if you want a human to create a painting, you might pay more, just like we pay more for organic food. There's some ideas that you might have governments that will build AI like infrastructure and just provide it to everybody. And then there's also some new business models that are emerging about how is the profit generated, how is that profit that the machines generate, how is it distributed more fairly? Elon Musk says that when you buy his robot car in the future, you can then rent it out to your neighbor and they can pay for that, and then you can pay down your car loan. There's a group called Regen Villages that is creating housing communities where robots will grow the food, solar panels will generate energy, water will be recycled, and then excess food and energy will be sold, and that will go to pay down your housing loan, right? So these are ways of making sure that many people benefit from this technology. And then, so that's sort of one aspect with the economy. But the other thing that's interesting is when we start digitizing technologies and they can scale, it means everyone can have access to them. So there's a really interesting movement now where you have biohackers that are emerging. They can buy cheap equipment in lab equipment to do biological experiments, to do genetic engineering. And that means that you might have a person like this come up with a cure for a disease or for cancer, right? Or that person could be coming up with a virus that they're going to spread and unleash, right? So as these technologies democratize, it means that there's the potential for one person to impact billions of people positively or negatively, which we haven't had before in the past. So how does governance work? How does regulation work? And then finally, I talked about the 6 Ds, mainly in terms of as we digitize, dematerialize, demonetize products and services. But I think we're also starting to apply this to our reality and our human bodies. So, for example, Pokemon Go, right? This child's game. I think this was the first example of a disruption to private property in hundreds of years, or thousands of years in some cases, where one person could create something fake and put it on your property, and you didn't know it was there, but it was real to thousands of other people, right? So, and as we go further into augmented reality and virtual reality, we're creating fake worlds around us on purpose. The X Prize, which is a competition that puts up $1 million prizes for people to innovate new technologies and solutions, recently partnered with All Nippon Airways. This is a Japanese airline on running a competition on teleportation. So the airline industry is afraid that they're going to be disrupted by, at the beginning you think I can talk to you on Skype, right? And then that improves, maybe we're in a virtual reality world and we can communicate, and then we start putting on sort of brain-to-brain interfaces and can connect that way. Perhaps down the road to where we can actually do something like in Star Trek, right? That's actually, that's in their guidelines as a moonshot. And speaking of brain-to-brain interfaces, there's a lot of work happening right now where people are developing sensors that can read your brain waves. This was an experiment that happened in 2014 where one man made the other man move his arm. And so this is just fascinating technology. A lot of it's being used to help people who are paralyzed. Sensors will read their brain waves, and then that will go to a computer, which then moves like an exoskeleton. So this technology is being designed to help people, but we're also on the brink of reading one another's minds and communicating in these new ways. And to me, that brings up a lot of questions about what does it mean to be human, to be an individual, and where our society is going in the future. So that was a quick presentation, a run through on a lot of different topics, but I hope it generated some different ways to think about how our world is changing and how these questions, what is my purpose if I don't have a job? Do I want to merge my mind with someone else? Like, these are questions that our generation will probably be facing in the next coming 2 decades. Thank you.